Thank you so much for coming to our session. I'm really excited to be with you all today, and this is probably what I would best describe as a convening of some of the best minds in the social impact space. So I am in fantastic company. My name is Angela Howard. I'm the CEO and founder of Call for Culture and the moderator for this chat. So think about this as like coffee with friends. We're all here. Hopefully you have your coffee, your tea. We're gonna have some great discussions today. And really the focus is for us to not just talk about the topic of social impact and how it multiplies business results, but also how we do that work, right? So I think we're really gonna be action-oriented today. So I do wanna do some introductions, but I wanna do it in the form of a question and some broader insights. So we're gonna go around the room with my friends here today, and I want you all to tell me a little bit about yourself, but also share with the audience, what would the world look like if every organization consciously connected social impact to business? Jake, why don't you go first? Giving you the hard questions to start.
Big question. So my name is Jake Wood. I'm the founder and CEO of a software company called Groundswell. We build social impact software that focuses on employee engagement for the enterprise, so things like donation matching, corporate volunteering, employee hardship funds, things like that. Prior to that, I ran a global disaster response and humanitarian relief organization named Team Rubicon. And that's really where I got a lot of experience in kind of corporate philanthropy. And I think to answer your question, I would maybe look back at that experience. At Team Rubicon, we would take volunteers. We had hundreds of thousands of volunteers. We would deploy them around the world and around the country into disaster zones and into humanitarian crisis events. And it was fascinating to always see just how powerful that experience was for those volunteers. And it wasn't just powerful for them in their personal life. I have countless stories of how those volunteers would come back and share with me that it actually lifted up their entire life. It improved their relationships at home. It improved how they showed up at work. And so if people aren't getting fulfilled at work with their 9 to 5, what are the opportunities that you as a company, as an HR leader, can unlock for that individual to connect with their community, to uplift them in a way that allows them to show up to work in a better capacity? So I think that's really the opportunity for social impact, lifting up the enterprise.
Ebony, tell us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ebony Thomas, I'm a partner at Grads of Life, which is a talent advisory firm, and I lead strategic growth and operations there. Prior to that, I was at Booz Allen Hamilton, leading organizational transformation, strategic planning, change management, all that. I would answer the question kind of similarly to Jake. I think that the world, it would be a place full of happy people. I think social impact is the collective good, and it can't be done individually by one company, one person. It's about how do we all band together to really have that impact. There are a number of different coalitions that exist out there where companies come together to try to make that impact And so I think it's really just around collective good, and that through that collective good, you've got happiness across the nation.
And last but not least, Jeremy.
Yeah, my name's Jeremy Edmonds, and I'm the Vice President of People and Culture at Snooze and AM Eatery. Snooze was founded on a simple principle, and it's a stack of pancakes can actually change the world. So when you band people together with a single purpose of going out and doing good, I think what that actually does is impacts the people that you're working with, it impacts your community. So in service of your question, when you have people that are all, jointly getting together and making a difference, it fulfills them, it creates happier people. And just imagine going home from work every single night and knowing that what you did had a greater impact. You're gonna carry that into your family, which is gonna carry that into the schools, and it just creates a place where we all love one another. And at Snooze, we talk about love all the time. We don't have an org chart, we have a love chart, because every single person needs someone who loves them. And so if you can create a world based on love, we're gonna create a much better world altogether.
I love that. And I think we oftentimes forget when we're talking about the workplace, we think about it as like this insular thing that's disconnected from the rest of society, right? And so, social impact is something, corporate responsibility, we've had many names for it. But what do you all think is driving this movement now to kind of finally realize that social impact should be a part of the fabric of an organization?
Sure. Well, in a room full of people leaders, I think that the numbers don't lie. The research is there. It's very clear. The younger demographics joining the workforce are eager to have and create purpose alongside profit. You know, I think the old social contract between employers and employees has changed. And I think people are looking for opportunities to do more than just drive the bottom line. And I think that the future of work, the future of progressive employers who are most competitive in the talent landscape are going to be those that answer that question. And I'll be honest, I don't think a lot of like young millennial and Gen Z people actually know what it means when they say, I want to have purpose alongside profit. But the companies that figure that out are going to be the ones that more consistently win in the talent war.
Yeah. I would say that the mindset has shifted. It used to be all about the bottom line, and not that the bottom line isn't important, but companies now are expanding their mindset, if you will, on social impact. It's not just about the bottom line, but it's about how they affect the entire ecosystem. So who's that ecosystem? It's the employees, and it's also the communities in which those companies operate in. Specifically, how we impact the community for the work that I'm in. It's a company called Year Up. We're training individuals and upskilling individuals that come from non-traditional backgrounds. They may not have 4-year degrees, but we train them through a comprehensive program so that they've got the skills to thrive and have meaningful careers at a variety of different companies. That's one way in which we're able to show that impact. But there are a number of different ways that you can show that social impact, where studies have shown that it still does impact that bottom line. So brand recognition, just increasing your brand presence, being able to increase employee retention. I think everybody has talked about how happy employees stay loyal and they stick around. So there are a lot of ways that social impact does indeed drive, impact to your bottom line.
I think, ultimately what we found through our research when we look at our engagement survey is impact is a multiplier of engagement. So when you're trying to figure out how to keep people engaged, how to create a fulfilling place, create a sense of belonging within your place, it starts with that one word, which is impact. And about 3 years ago, I was sitting across from my CEO. He looked at me and he said, I need you to talk about engagement in a much different way. And I was like, I can do this for you. And then I went home and said, oh shit, I don't know how I'm gonna do this for you. Like, we all talk about engagement in the exact same way, and it's by throwing a percentage up on the board, and we say, this is what engagement is, and now let's go fix it, and you need to do better. And so I sat there and I dug into that data, and the data became very clear that the one thing that changed between a restaurant, in my world it's a restaurant that's performing well, and a restaurant that's not from engagement was impact. Those leaders that led sustainability practices, that led community, that developed their people, that promoted what we did for the greater good, had higher engagement. So I had to ask myself, why? Why is impact such a driver to engagement? And we know we all want engagement because it retains people. And if you're retaining people, you're creating a happy workforce. And so impact really does become that driver and that multiplier to the bottom line, because if you're not turning people over, you're impacting the bottom line. You're not retraining people and retraining people. You're getting people bought into your mission. You have people who can promote your business in a way that new people don't. They're gonna have that ramp up experience in that period. So impact is that multiplier of business and the main driver, as long as you have the foundation, which is creating a good culture and operating with a true north and a vision and a strategy that people can be aligned behind.
By the way, the three of us went to a Snooze diner this morning for breakfast, and you don't often...
It was amazing.
It was legitimately the best breakfast I've ever had. But you don't often associate a diner employees with like happy, engaged employees. The atmosphere at this place would blow you away. So whatever they're doing is working.
Y'all are gonna make me blush here.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you have the secret sauce, right? I think you're talking about love in the workplace, which we don't talk a lot about compassion and the fact that that does have a place, but then also how people fit into the bigger picture of what they're doing for Snooze, but also what they're doing for the world, I think is what you were talking about. So really quickly, I want to turn to you all in the audience and just get a quick poll. How many of you, whether it's your own organization or an organization you're working with, how many of you have like meaningful, how many of you have meaningful kind of interactions with social impact as a part of your organization, whether it's part of the values or initiatives or programs?
Y'all deserve a big round of applause for that, because that's 50 to 60% I mean a big round of applause for that.
Yeah, and I think, something that as you all were talking, I was thinking about this idea of your value system, right? And typically organizations who are incorporating these initiatives have a value system around social impact. And social impact is like this big, huge buzzword, right? So I would just want to hear from you all, like tell me from a tactical perspective, what that actually looks like within your organization. What are you driving for? What are some of the measurements that you're looking for when it comes to your social impact goals? And I'll start with Jeremy this time.
Yeah, I can start on this one for sure. One of the things I loved the most about joining Snooze is, we have what we call the Snooze Compass, and there's 8 compass points on it. Guests and snoozers, because you can't have guests without having snoozers to serve them. Then we have community and sustainability, which are partnered. We have best of the best in passion, individuality, and craveable. All things that drive and give us the ability to operate our business. Sustainability and community are built into our value system. We don't just pop them up on a wall, and if you've ever been to a Snooze, our Jack, like we talked about it today at breakfast, but our Jack is everywhere. And it's because we want every single snoozer in that restaurant to look at that Jack and know that they are making every decision in that restaurant through the scope of that. So when you're in the heart of the house and you're about to throw that milk carton away, the right person for us is the person that knows you take the blue cap off and throw it in the green bin. You take the bottle, you wash it out, and you throw it in the blue bin. And then, you put all your compost in the composting bin. So it's starting, when people start, it's building that repetition, building that connection, building that understanding of what it means to be sustainable, because it is one of our values. And if someone's not living up to that value, it's having the courageous conversation to say, hey, this is something that means something to us, so we need to take action. And if you can't take action, is this the right place for you? And we see it show up in a lot of different ways. So it's how we train, it's how we engage people. As an overall organization, we gave $1.7 million back to our local communities last year because we have a program called 1%. 1% of our bottom line goes to our local community. So $1.7 million last year. We're on target to do well over $2 million this year. We do it through volunteer hours. Every snoozer gets 8 hours of volunteer time for free to get out and volunteer in the community on their own. And then we arrange volunteer days that don't come out of those hours, so you and your team can go out and volunteer as well. So it really starts with building the right systems, tools, and processes that supports the values that you're talking about. And if sustainability and community is important to you, if developing your people to create an impact is important, you have to have the systems, the tools, and the processes to support it.
Ebony, what are your thoughts?
I would say one of our biggest values just lies in closing the opportunity divide. And I think when it comes to values for a company, you have to make it simple. You have to make it easy for your employees to be able to embody it. If it's too complicated, people aren't going to be able to understand or embody your values. So for us, again, it's about closing the opportunity divide. Now, how many people here are familiar with the opportunity divide or have heard of it before? So essentially what the opportunity divide is there are millions of skilled, motivated workers, and there are millions of companies that have talent shortages, and we're closing the gap between those two. So that's just one of the values that we embody. Everybody who works at our organizations understands the importance of that, and they're striving to do something toward closing that divide. It's simple, it's easy, and it's impactful. The other cool thing about it is not only are we doing that, but then we're enabling social impact for other companies through our partnerships. So we've got partnerships with over 300 companies that are also then, by working with us, having a social impact initiative just simply by closing some of their gaps. So it's a bidirectionally beneficial, not only for the person who gets that opportunity for a meaningful career, but also for the firm that's able to close that talent shortage.
The challenge with going third is that their answers are so good.
Ditto.
Like you just fear that you're going to repeat what they already said. I think a few things that we see at Groundswell. One, the single biggest indicator of what kind of engagement a company is going to get in its social impact programs, whether it's donation matching, 8 hours of volunteer time off, whatever it might be, is does the leader actually give a shit?
Yep.
In 30 seconds with a prospect, when I'm trying to sell our software to a company, I will know whether if we win that deal, that company will be successful in our platform. And it'll be based on, are they just going through a check the box exercise? Hey, we're at a scale now, we probably need to do something like this. Go find a software platform, let's roll it out so we can check the box. Or is this something that the leader authentically believes is either important to the world or important to the bottom line? And that's the single biggest factor on whether or not a social impact program at a company is going to be successful. There are a few other things that you guys said that I actually want to comment on, though. Like the opportunity divide. We actually approach that concept, that framing from a different perspective, a different opportunity divide. One of the things that we're constantly arguing with our customers about is paid time off, which you brought up. And there are some leaders that are out there, again, this is one of those data points that kind of make alarm bells in my head go off, that say, why would I pay people to volunteer? They should just go do it. And what people don't understand is that volunteering is a privilege, right? There are so many people in our workforces that can't afford to volunteer.
Right.
You're a single mother working 2 jobs, when are you gonna volunteer?
Right.
You are going to school at night to try to get ahead and earn your 4-year degree so that you can climb the ladder, when are you gonna volunteer? I think that there's this framing, this privileged framing that so many executives have around something like volunteering. One other example, we fight tooth and nail at Groundswell to have companies unrestrict the full range of nonprofits that they'll match donations to. And the reason we do that is simple. Your workforce is diverse, and their philanthropy, their giving is informed by their lived experience. And so, if you grew up in a broken home, or you're a cancer survivor, or you're a military veteran like me, what you support is probably informed by that experience. That experience is also deeply personal, often, so privacy is important in that. But if you're a company that's coming in and saying, no, we don't want to match to these things, because we don't think that they're important, or we don't think that they align with our values, then in your effort to build an inclusive program, an inclusive workforce, you're actually starting from a framing of exclusion. You're dictating what matters and what's worth supporting. And so those are a couple of things that, at least for me, are really early indications to the authenticity of that leadership's buy-in to that social impact program.
Jake, I want to just add on to that. A real world example from this is we found the same thing. It wasn't up to somebody sitting in our what we call mothership, a corporate office, to say, here's who you need to go volunteer with, here's your nonprofit partners that you're going to work with. We established a role in every single one of our restaurants called a change maker. And that change maker's job within the restaurant, now they're a server or a barista or a line cook, or they have a job that they're doing, but on top of that, they're the change maker. And their job is to work with their team and understand there's 50 people in this restaurant. Out of all 50 of us, what's important to us? How do I engage this, nonprofit this month and this one next month? And, you're into this, so let's go to the animal rescue over here. And, we're really into helping kids, so go volunteer at this school. But it's somebody from the local community who's understanding their population, and we understand our guest population because we want to do what's important to our guest, because it's also a way for us to bring our guests in, bring those ravers in, and have them support something bigger as well. And ultimately, then it helps our bottom line, because these guests see us going out and helping their community, then they give back to us in return. We don't do it for that, but we know that it benefits us in the long run.
It's a nice benefit.
Yeah, I just want to highlight 2 things that feel really tangible of what you both said, Jake and Jeremy, which is we have to get closer to our people and understand what they care about, right? I think oftentimes in organizations, the more they grow, the farther away that executive team actually gets from understanding their people and the lived experiences. And so the decisions they're making are so out of tune and so disconnected from real life. And then to Jeremy's point, I think the co-design of what matters to you, what matters to the culture. Culture is not something you throw down to people. It's actually a culmination of the sum of your parts. And it's a groundswell, and it's role modeling at the top. So we have to consider those 2 things and give it to the people, right? And give it to the people of what they care about. So this is a brilliant discussion. I do want to just turn to you all again and just see if there's any questions in the audience as we're kind of halfway through. Yes. Or I think there's a Slido. I'm so sorry. Maybe I'm breaking the rules here. Are we supposed to have them submit via Slido? Yes. Submit via Slido if you have any questions, and I'll continue to talk until we see some questions on the screen. So I want to go back to what you said, Jake, which in my head I was interpreting it as performative, right? I think there's a lot of organizations, and we saw this, I think, a few years ago, who were talking about social impact, talking about DEI, talking about ESG, and I resonate with what you said, because a lot of people were just looking at their competitors and saying, oh shit, I gotta do that because my competitor is doing that, or I've got a one person over here. They weren't focused on the impact. It was more about the intent and the return on that intent. So I would love to hear from you all as to how can you identify that performativeness and make sure that you're getting to the real impact versus just intent? Ebony, you want to
start
go
here,
first?
and I can talk about this one all day long.
You were ready. You were ready.
Before coming to my current company, I was at another organization where I led our African American network, 2,000 members, had a direct line to our executive leadership team around what they were doing and making sure that they were not being performative in the efforts around 2020 after the killing of George Floyd. To your point, everyone made a Instagram post saying, what's important to them, but you didn't necessarily see that action. So working with a group of individuals, creating a strategy that really did talk about what the change that we wanted to see, and then actionable or tangible ways that people would be able to help that change. I think the difference in creating a strategy and having it be actionable is holding your leadership teams accountable. So making sure that you are following up with them, that you're getting together to understand what are the metrics that are gonna drive change and a difference. And again, just holding that leadership team accountable for that change. And when you don't see it, don't be afraid to speak up. Everyone has a voice, no voice is too small. And just making sure that you're voicing the fact that you see that they're not putting their actions where their words are. And I think that speaks volumes. No one wants to be held accountable for something that they haven't done when they've said that outwardly. So just hold them accountable for that.
Oh, man. It's funny, I was in a conversation just a couple hours ago, and we were talking about performative activism, so this is like striking a chord. Two things I would talk about. First, to piggyback on Ebony's comment, I was a CEO in 2020 when George Floyd was killed, and we had to make the decision, are we gonna make a statement? And I think my position as a CEO has largely been, we speak with our actions, we speak through our culture. Everyone within the organization I ran at the time, Team Rubicon, they knew that they belonged, they felt safe, and I at first was resistant to making a statement. It just didn't really feel like it was our space to be in. We eventually came to the conclusion that we should. And I made sure I looked at my team. I said, there's gonna be, it's one thing to be performative, it's one thing to make this statement. We better be ready to take action because of what results from this statement. So we put out a statement on Instagram, felt a little cheap. We also sent an email to 150,000 of our volunteers, affirming our support for the Black community, the horror of what happened. And we didn't send it from a no reply email, we sent it from my personal email. And I said, okay, folks, it's about to get real. And hundreds of nasty emails coming back to me directly. And one by one, I responded individually and fired every single one of those volunteers. It's really hard to fire a volunteer, by the way. Some nuance there. And it was a moment. It was a galvanizing moment internally. But sending 300 termination emails to volunteers. Thank you for your past service. We know we are no longer in need of it. So yes, you better be ready for what comes next. Performative volunteerism, that's a hill I'll die on. Having run a global volunteer organization, nothing would irritate me more than companies that wanted to show up, always in a matching t-shirt, pick up a shovel, take a couple selfies, move this dirt in this pile to that pile for about 90 minutes, eat a bag lunch, get on a bus, and drive away. Don't do it. Your people don't want to do it. It's not worth the PR release that you're going to put out. People can sniff out impact. They can sniff out fake performative impact. Give them what they want, which is the opportunity to make a difference.
Absolutely, and I think it goes back to, yes. I think it goes back to those values, right? We set values as an organization, and people are very in tune to see when actions match those values or don't. Our people are smart. They know when we're being performative. So I do want to get to a question here that is right in line, and we'll do maybe a little bit of a lightning round around this one because I want to get to some more of these questions. In an organization where social impact isn't prioritized, what are some low-cost actions we can take to incorporate social impact principles or practices? Jeremy, we'll start with you and we'll go down the line.
Yeah. I think, when you're thinking about the cost of social impact, where I would start from a low cost perspective would be to focus on ERG groups, which are ways to give people a voice, get people involved. I would focus on, what are the actions that you can take that'll help understand what your business needs, help understand the voice of your people, so that when something happens, you can respond in an authentic, genuine, and vulnerable way. So that's, I think, an easy way to start that typically takes no initial investment. And then if stuff starts coming out of there of what they need, then you can start looking to figure out how you budget for it year over year over year to engage people that way. The second thing that I would think about from a low-cost perspective is how do you build it into your value set? So if what you're saying is that that we want to have a social voice, we want you to feel empowered, we want you to feel like you have a sense of belonging, where is that built into your value system? Where is that built into your vision? And how do you begin to talk about it in a way that's true and authentic to the voice of your business?
I would just pull the thread on the ERG piece. I think one thing that I found low cost and beneficial, because sometimes the ERG groups don't have large budgets. So we had to find every way to operate in a low-cost way. But we found that it was helpful to partner with other ERGs. So while there is value in just working in your individual one, what we did was we would partner with the other multicultural groups, with the military veteran groups, with all of the different groups, because by putting our kind of low budgets together, we were able to have greater impact and do bigger things that were benefiting the community. So I think the value of partnership is helpful when you have a lower cost opportunity.
Yeah, I would say start small and ask for forgiveness, not permission. And what I mean by that is if your organization isn't prioritizing this, you lead a department, you lead a team, find time. Find time, take the afternoon off, take your team, take your department out, go do something impactful, and then bring receipts. Like bring receipts back to the boss, testimonials, show them about your team, posting it on social media in a non-performative way, of course. And over time, like, do you have higher retention? Do you have higher engagement rates? Do you have, higher, whatever it is that you're measuring, just prove it. But, don't go around inside an organization trying to play by their rules. Like, break the rules. Tells you a little bit about me, I guess.
Volunteer.
Yeah, push the envelope a little bit, right? We got about 3 more minutes, and there's some great questions on the screen. If we don't get to your questions, yeah, why not? Let's just continue. Let's make it happen. I know we have a lot of good questions. If we haven't gotten to your question today, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to discuss. But really quickly, Jake, before we wrap up, there's a lot of questions about having social impact and a culture of social impact in a dispersed team. Any recommendations in the last 30 seconds before your mic cuts off?
Yeah, I think that there's this fallacy that all this social impact has to be collective, that you have to get people together to do it. And I think one of the things, at least, that I've tried to express here today on stage is like, your people are individuals. They have individual things that they want to do, that they want to support with their time, talent, and treasure. That's especially true for a distributed workforce. So give them the opportunity to go create impact in their community. Paid time off, volunteer grants, dollars for doers, donation matching, whatever that is. Like, respect the diversity of your workforce by giving them the opportunity to have the impact that they want, the way that they want, the way that they can.
Ooh, right on time. You saw that. That was masterful right there, Jake. Okay. Yes. So what did you say? Time, treasure?
Time, talent, treasure.
Time, talent, treasure. Love that. And I just want to thank you all for your time, for all of the questions, and also just spending time with us today. I know you could have been at other sessions. And so give the panelists a round of applause. We had so many great perspectives today. Just to kind of summarize some real tangibles, I think we talked a lot about incorporating social impact into your value system. We talked about co-designing with your people, because your culture is a culmination of the sum of its parts, right? And not to have this top-down methodology. We talked about performative social impacts. People know when you're being performative, so let's make sure we're coming through authentically in a way that speaks to our people. I just want to thank you all so much. To my new friends, I feel like I connected with some new folks today and folks doing similar work. Thank you all so much, and thank you all for being here and asking so many great questions. We'll be around a little bit after the panel if you want to come up and say hi. Thanks, everybody.